When I first learned there would be a sequel to the original Star Wars, I was confused. What more could they do? The Death Star had been destroyed. Oh, spoiler alert. Anyway, I couldn't imagine what could come next. My brother explained that there was still an entire empire out there, that it was galaxy-wide. He also pointed out that the rebellion, too, would be widespread, and there would be billions of people struggling on millions of worlds. It dawned on me right there and then just how much one could do with a series like this. The endless possibilities. I couldn't wait. When the movie came out, I was a bit disappointed. Not by how dark it was, or its slow pace, or lack of an ending like some people today think was the reaction. I was disappointed because I could tell there was so much more to cover, so many other stories of people caught up in this struggle. People on both sides were trapped in this conflict, though I enjoyed the film, and it would go on to be my favorite, even before it was everyone else's. I looked forward to a day when someone would make a series that went into these stories. At last, in 2022, that became a reality. I was once given a piece of advice on screenwriting by a friend who said that a character's first line should say something about the character. He said it as a rule, but I don't agree. I think it's a guideline, but it's a great guideline. Before writing that first line for a character, try to find something which will define them, and if it fits the scene, use it. This is wonderfully exemplified through the introduction of Dedra Meero. Her first line is quoting verbatim from the ISB mission statement.
We're here to further security objectives by collecting intelligence, providing useful analysis, and conducting effective covert action, sir.
Very good.
It reveals both... By the way, I love her reaction here when she's being chastised. It reveals both her commitment to the Empire and the flaw which she will have to overcome. She is immediately both a badass and a troubled character who will need to grow. And frankly, I think she's the most interesting villain in all of Star Wars. Yes, this includes Darth Vader. Yeah, I know, how dare I disparage the Chosen One. But here's the thing. While the character came to define evil, then redempted evil, he did not have a particularly big arc. At least not until the prequels. And that, well...
It's all Obi-Wan's fault. He's jealous.
What I'm trying to say is that much of what makes Vader interesting and fearful is his outfit, which was originally just supposed to be his flight suit until Lucas fell in love with the look and had the actor wear it the whole time. He is a great villain and an icon. But I find the development and arc of Dedra Meero so much more interesting. Everything from her lines, to her delivery, to the way she wears her hair and outfit are statements of her character. And we're only just beginning with her. As she goes through the series, notice all the little things the actress does to make you feel what you should for her. For instance, you constantly get a sense of snootiness from her. Much of that comes from the simple fact that she moves the upper part of her mouth more than the lower part. Also, every movement of hers is considered, efficient, and careful. I fear her perseverance more than I fear Vader's lightsaber. Okay, maybe not all the time. But to be fair, Vader did not have to navigate through the bureaucracies of the ISB. Through them, we see what Cassian had meant by...
They're so proud of themselves, they don't even care. They're so fat and satisfied, they can't imagine that someone like me would ever get inside their house.
They are also involved in holding onto their own corners of the galaxy that it's obvious how they would miss what's happening within them. Everyone's duty is to focus on their own sectors, never the big picture. In this scene, the ISB commander reminds Dedra that her competition...
His quarterly reports, however, are in, and yours are not, and here we are spending your valuable time with this issue.
Busy work is more important than effective work. Yet Dedra perseveres, a trait both admirable and fearful, which makes her my favorite villain. The other main character introduced in this arc is the woman who will become the head of the rebellion. No big whoop. And while Dedra's arc will involve climbing the social ladder, Mon Mothma's arc will involve dealing with the top of it. Her story involves navigating the diplomatic political aspects that control society, but it reflects so much of her own. In particular, the way major issues which affect millions of people are going to be glossed over during a dinner party.
Well, these people are fun.
Oh, are they? Are they fun? Oh, we should find some Gorman guests for tonight and see how amused they are. Your fun friends just cut off their shipping lanes yesterday. Do you know how many will starve? Perhaps we can laugh about it over the third course.
Yeah, we should all just relax and stop caring about political issues. Sound familiar? So that, at last, concludes the first arc, where characters and setting are introduced. But these last two characters were brought in while the story moved on to Act 2. This is why it is important to note that formulas should be treated as guidelines rather than rules. If the writers had adhered to the strict regulations of screenwriting as laid out by so many books on formatting, all introductions would have needed to be in the first 1/6 of the entire story, meaning everyone, including these last two characters, would have needed to be brought in within the first 2 episodes. That would have damaged the series, the same way Rogue One was damaged by trying to jam every introduction into the first 20 minutes of the movie. Incidentally, the original Star Wars allowed 40 minutes for the first act, but that was before everyone and his grandmother had written a book on the formula of screenwriting, which was then taken as gospel by readers and producers everywhere. But I digress. When the show returned to Cyril Karn, I was initially surprised. Wasn't his story over? I had admired the way they had stayed on him when Cassian and Luthen escaped, focusing on his devastation at failing rather than the excitement of the heroes getting away. It felt like a wrap-up, but when he moved in with his mother, I realized what they were doing. For one, they would have a redemption arc, not one of redeeming to the light side, but of getting back in with the Empire. He had fallen as far as he could, and his bouncing back would be as compelling as any hero's journey. But also, this would be the third story of a mother influencing her child. Marva raised and influences Cassian on one side, Edie Karn raised and influences Cyril on the other, and Mon Mothma is in the middle, trying to raise her daughter and struggling with her soul. This is yet another ongoing theme throughout the series, one that is easy to overlook, but I believe is very important. Marva raised Cassian to tread his own path, and is frustrated by his straying. Edie raised Cyril in a strict fashion, trying to get him to conform to standard society, and is frustrated that he conformed to something different than she had imagined. She's even wearing high heels to breakfast. And Mon is trying to raise her daughter to see past the glitz and glamour of their privileged life, and is frustrated that her daughter only wants to bask in the luxuries. All three love their children dearly, and want them to be the best they can be in their own views, even if they are at odds with one another. With Cyril, I thought it was particularly interesting that Edie was not pushing him toward joining the Empire. In fact, she mocks his interest in law enforcement. That's not the standard, expected career path. She raised him to follow the straight and narrow, fit in, don't stand out. What she did not realize is that this teaching was the very thing which led him into a military lifestyle, and it presents us with another important theme of this show, the parallel between order we find in the corporate world and that found in an authoritarian militarism. Both have their grunts and their leaders. Both have their established hierarchies and cutthroat methods of climbing the ladder. The difference is that in this world, the military is in charge, so an eager young man who yearns for something higher would prefer the military. That's why this very short scene is so important, where Cyril waits by the window for his brief moment of direct sunlight. It's only about 5 seconds, but it's everything he could possibly want. It even appears as though he's looking directly into the sun, and he's nearly brought to tears. Though that could be because he's looking into the freaking sun, who knows. But it tells you the most important thing about him. And it's so beautiful, it almost makes you forget that he's trying to climb out of his hole to go kill the main protagonist. Speaking of which, he's on Aldhani helping rob an Imperial payroll. The steps of this story are exemplary of a heist story without all the flashiness. We learn about each character, we learn their capabilities and the stakes, and we get a step-by-step description of how the robbery is supposed to go down. So when it goes awry, we are able to follow. But the true heart of this arc, and perhaps of the entire series, is Nemik. Every other character brings in the motivations of their factions, but Nemik is the one who explains directly why we are all there in the first place. Everything that everyone is doing comes down to the philosophies of this idealistic young man. Like in this example, when Nemik talks about something we often overlook when it comes to a resistance movement.
We've grown reliant on Imperial tech and we've made ourselves vulnerable. There's a growing list of things we've known and forgotten, things they've pushed us to forget. Things like freedom.
This concept has been talked about by social rights leaders throughout history, including Malcolm X and Gandhi, who each advocated in their memoirs for people to become self-reliant, because the more you rely on what society has to offer, the more society has a hold on you. Another line which goes so fitting with the real world, especially today, is this one.
So much going wrong, so much to say, and all of it happening so quickly. The pace of repression outstrips our ability to understand it, and that is the real trick of the Imperial thought machine. It's easier to hide behind 40 atrocities than a single incident.
It's frightening how real his assertions are, and how relevant they are to today's world in particular. From a story perspective, the show does a wonderful job of weaving it naturally, not shoving it in awkwardly. Most of the time, when people complain about politics in series and movies, they're not actually upset about what they're saying as the problem. Whether online reviewers, commenters, or people at a party, when you go through the history of what these people do like, you will find several stories with politics all over them. So they're not really complaining about politics being involved. They're complaining about the politics being shamelessly shoehorned in without any purpose. It damages the flow of the story, and frankly, undermines the very point the storytellers are trying to make. But here, the point is made beautifully. It's relevant to history, and to today's world, all while continuing the flow of the story. Something else this arc does, which is important, is it brings fear back to the Empire. One thing I remember from watching the original Star Wars was that the Empire was horrifying. I remember seeing the Rebel defenders being shot down by the stormtroopers, including that sweet old man. At least I assume he was sweet, we had a close-up of him. But despite their reputation of being unable to shoot, the fact is that they steamrolled over everything wherever they went. In the final battle, almost every Rebel pilot was killed before the Death Star was destroyed. In the decades since, they've been made disposable. But the makers of Andor understood that the villains create tension, which is everything for keeping an audience's attention. So they made every element of the Empire terrifying, including a single TIE fighter. Even more devious is this scene, where an Imperial officer explains how they managed to get the Aldhani natives to stop going to their sacred land. Thus far, they did not stop them by force. Instead, they placed a series of comfort units along their path.
Shelters and taverns with cheap local beverages. Quite predictably, what began as 500 pilgrims at the bottom has already dwindled down to... Where are we now, Lieutenant?
We counted 60 last night, sir.
They tempted them with vices, and slowly but surely, the Aldhanis weeded themselves out. It's a tool used in the real world by imperialists across the world. And America, as it spread westward, which worked better than bullets and infected blankets could ever do. Once again, the show is making commentary about reality as much as it is telling a story, the very thing sci-fi and fantasy are best at doing. Speaking of what sci-fi and fantasy are great at doing, just look at that. What a brilliant idea for an escape scene. This is what sci-fi is made for.
Full boost, thrust on level!
And finally, to end the arc, we are once again given an example of the primary thesis of the story. Andor must do to another man what Luthen will be trying to do to him for the rest of the season. Kill him because he knows too much. The difference, of course, is that the other person did something wrong to Cassian first, but that's why Cassian is our hero. This is part 2 of an 8-part series I am doing on Andor. I'm covering each arc and analyzing them from a story point of view. If you like my analysis, let me know in the comments below and give me a thumb up. If you don't like my analysis, tell me all about it in the comments below. All comments, good or bad, help with the algorithm. If this series does well, I may do more in the future. And if you agree with my viewpoints on storytelling, you might want to try out one of my books. The link to my website is in the description. If you're a Star Wars fan, you might want to start with Relic Worlds. It's a mixture of Star Wars and Indiana Jones. Thank you for watching, and happy travels, everyone!